Colleagues, if it's okay with everyone, we can take questions now. I see in the Q&A chat box. What was really interesting for me was the golden thread of communication that was sort of highlighted in all the talks from Michelle and everyone else. How communication, depending on whatever you are working with, is really important. So in that regard, we have a comment or a conversation from Mr. Sieberhagen here in the chat box, where he is coming from a different angle that touches on communication. He's from the National Meteorology Institute of South Africa and working in the field of radiometry. And he is interesting to know about the scope of research activities in South Africa in the field of hyperspectral or multispectral imaging. So he has started a project to determine the requirements for setting up a calibration facility that would allow the calibration characterization of these cameras, specifically agricultural drones. So maybe if we can start there, is there anyone that would like to maybe Prof. Swart, if I can, because you touched on the drones and the remote sensing, are you aware of any projects like this, or would you like to comment on that?
Yes. I think Dave Berger is going to talk about a lot of the stuff tomorrow, if I'm right, Dave, if you're listening. Artificial intelligence, etc. Now, how that links with communication, I'm not sure I understand the link or the question that this person has. But sensors, etc. Those, the technologies are developing by the day, literally, and I'm sure Dave is going to be telling us all about artificial intelligence and how that links to it, and that's the best I can give answer I can give at this stage.
Okay, then Dave, if that's fine, then we'll leave it for you tomorrow to discuss that one. Is that okay?
Answer then, no, that is fine. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, perfect.
So yes, we'll deal a bit with that, but I can just quickly to answer that very specific question about hyperspectral imaging and those kind of initiatives. That is part of the larger program at FABI at the University of Pretoria, and we've actually just purchased a hyperspectral camera. So we're very interested to work with people who are calibrating those kind of instruments. So this is definitely something which we'd like to discuss going forward, and I'll talk a bit more about it tomorrow.
Okay, and the contact details is in the chat box, I think. And then there was a question from Derek Watt on biosecurity related collaborations with surrounding SADC countries, which seem to be a key mechanism within the national biorisk mitigation strategy. To what extent have these been put in place? So I'm aware of I'm aware of one FAO initiative that was rolled down from regional level to national level, the STOSAR project, which was also rolled down to the large level, and where it was quite a comprehensive approach insofar as that it involved training in terms of identification of pests and diseases. And those 5 pests and diseases were identified as fall armyworm, tuta absoluta, mice lethal necrosis disease, and I don't want to call it Panama disease. It is called Fusarium wilt on banana, and the fruit fly project with the University of Mozambique. So there was a massive rollout of that, where people were trained in the identification, referral centers were created, and then is sort of stepping up those activities. Farmer field schools were established where what Roger was referring to, where the different methods that are available to rural communities to ensure household food security was implemented. And it was really interesting. I mean, it's a different ball game to do research under those kind of environment, because you're really restricted in terms of input. But the one treatment that gave very promising results was when people used the ash that they generated from the cooking areas, and they applied it weekly in the wall of the growing maize plants. Provided very good control against fall armyworm. It was labor intensive, but there was no, obviously, no pesticides involved, no expensive BT seeds, etc. So, Jan Hendrik, if you are willing to also elaborate on that would be great, on the activities that have been put in place, and maybe if you can refer to the IPPC and the reporting and the regional measures that are in place to safeguard our borders.
Also, thank you. Yes, that is. I will touch on that also tomorrow during my talk. But I think what we need to realize is exactly right. Is that there are the FAO has now recognized transboundary pests, and from International Plant Protection Convention output, that is a new term. And so that created some confusion amongst member countries as well. So how we deal with things is a problem, in the sense that we talk about migratory pests, transboundary pests, quarantine pests, and then there's different international signatories, and I will elaborate a little bit more on that tomorrow. But for instance, the World Trade Organization's agreement on sanitary and phytosanitary measures recognize the IPPC as a standard setting body. The standard setting body then does not talk about transboundary and migratory pests as such, but is focused on trade and is focused on quarantine pests. Now, recently they've created a global group who are looking at exactly that, and that is to scan the globe basically and identify these type of pests that may cause on a global or a more global or regional level damage, such as fall armyworm and Tuta absoluta, fruit flies, etc., tropical race 4, all of those, who is currently threatening global industries or agriculture in so many countries. So the ways are changed. Now I serve on that group, and we've made quite a bit of stride. We started in March, so there's still a heck of a lot of work to do to move to a point, but we want to develop a system that can actually focus as an early warning to countries with regard to some of these pests that tend to spread very quickly. However, it's not foolproof, and it will never be foolproof. We get these odd ones like shuttle borer, which just suddenly appears in just a few countries, but it causes havoc in those countries where it is. And many of those are not recognized. I will talk about it tomorrow again, but a pest like banana bunchy top virus is having a tremendous damage on bananas. And if you look at it, perhaps even more than tropical race 4, it's just not recognized or seen by countries as important. Currently, it's in the Ugu district in South Africa, and I was there in February, and it really causes a heck of a lot of damage to bananas. And again, as Roger has indicated, again, it causes damage on mostly for small-scale farmers. Commercial guys are roguing and spraying and do a heck of a lot of work with millions of rands of damage, but they are able to keep up. Small-scale guys are dependent on bananas, who have to eat it as terms of their daily nutrition. And because the bananas are now bunched, they are not growing properly, they're stunted, and they don't give proper fruit. They now result to sell the suckers, and the suckers are already infected, so they are just causing a bigger problem. So those are the type of things that needs to be addressed more on a global and a regional scale. But yes, you're right. There's going to be more. There's quite a number of more of these things coming in. So the project on the RAP project for 5 transboundary pests that's been developed, and I think the value in that project was for training. Unfortunately, the funding to be implemented on the ground for surveillance and detection is rather limited, and that is maybe something that is not as good in the sense that South Africa can maybe cope with that, but a lot of the regional countries or the countries in the region is really doesn't have the capacity to survey for these pests, and if that funding dries up, it's basically a project wasted.
Thanks, Jan Hendrik. Colleagues, then there was a question from Rachel Weinberg. She says, Roger, you describe a worrying situation. How much of this is due to the production methods we are using, which are heavily reliant on monocultures and high use of agri-chemicals, thus increasingly diminishing the ability of natural systems to bring in any kind of ecological balance? Surely we need a fundamentally different approach to agriculture. So that's a difficult one, because in the end it's about, I think, effectiveness and productivity and the scale of economics. But Roger, I I know what your views are on this is, but let me hand it over to you for a response.
Yes, it's becoming more and more evident that our current agricultural practices are not economically and environmentally sustainable, and that's a concern. We need to get into some sort of harmony using the resources around us, the natural enemies, the crop intercropping, all sort of cultural methods to be viable going forward. If we continue to spray and just spray and spray and spray, these pests are going to build up insecticide resistance, no matter what we say. I know that in maize, the commercial guys are following all the protocols correctly, but there's lots of farmers that are not, and we'll find that insecticide resistance will build up. We're very worried about tutor. It's getting sprayed by anything and everything, and it's just a prime candidate for developing extreme resistance. And then tomatoes are going to be a problem to grow in South Africa. So we need some sort of farming harmony systems. We can't just have production at all costs. It must be sustainable. And we've all heard this for years, but it's now coming to a crisis situation where the pests are getting on top of us if we're not careful. And certainly smallholder subsistence agriculture is going to be heavily damaged, if not, decimated, if we're not careful. Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Roger. Yes, I think that's a difficult one, because you have to balance the need of the population with which is short term, with the long term sustainability of the environment. And time will tell if we as a human race will succeed in this. But the signs are worrying. But at the same time, many of the companies do have stewardship programs in place where they monitor drivers of ecological health, such as pollinator health, for instance. So whether that is enough, I don't know. I think time will tell. So it's a difficult question. I think anything about balance is difficult. This question from Ben Durham he says, very useful presentation, Roger, thanks. What is not clear to me in terms of management strategies is primary responsibility. Obviously, public and private sector combined but government interest on developing smallholder farmers suggests greater responsibility with a question mark. Is there a discussion between government and farmer association and crop developers on developing a way forward? So maybe just from my side, I think when you say crop developers, maybe you mean seed companies or agrochemical companies. So I'm aware that many of the larger seed companies do have smallholder programs. They invest in this quite heavily in some cases. Not the problem, but I think again the difficulty in striking the balance is their take on it would be, you know, their seed varieties and what those can offer, whereas I think from government's point of view it would be sustainability and long-term resilience, which is quite different. Sometimes it can be quite different. I don't think it needs to be, but it can be different. So there is certainly support provided. Whether that support is sufficient and whether that rolls down to all the levels, right down. Because I think one of the things that I found very, very worrying is when I read the report on the socioeconomic impact study that we did for DeLard, Elise Landel-Magnus and her team did that. What's very worrying is the responses from the participants in the survey was that, you know, they know how to grow maize. That's what they love. That's what they know. That's what they need to do. If they stop doing that and they are forced to do something else, what happens to that rural barrier that we have in place on our borders? What happens economically and what happens socially? And that's where I'm worried. So Jan-Hendrik, I don't want to put you on the spot with this one, but it does talk to sort of rolling out these programs, you know, right down to that level. And I know the challenges that your department faces is similar to what we face, but maybe you can just indicate some of those challenges so to create a broader awareness around that.
Yeah, thanks. Answer. Yes, it's complicated. I think part of our government's issues of rolling out, and it came from Wilhelm's talk as well with shuttle border, and he knows that I experienced the heat with the steering committee on shuttle borders from all the sides. It's because of our government's lack of linking different entities within government with each other. The NPPO, or Directorate Plant Health, where I am, are interested in quarantine pests. So our focus are new pests that get into the country, how to deal with them and move on. Not because we want to leave it where it is, but simply because our mandate doesn't stretch that far. So for armyworm, which is now well established, endemic, it's still regulated by us, but not for long, because in terms of the feasibility of that, as well as the fact that it is now established. Now it becomes a rural development issue. So now to link that, or a plant production issue, now to link those are difficult. And that is where we need to do a lot of work from the department side, because that is where additional research needs to be there. We've started the process, and I think, Ansar, if you would recall, I think it is 5 projects on fall armyworm, which we did through the ARC. And now these projects are started to finish up. I think most are now finished. And now we can look at that results and determine the way forward. And exactly that, we had a meeting the other day with our research wing to this, and they asked the question, now that you've got the research, what now? So now we need to analyze that, look at that, and put it forward to rural development and plant production guys. But this fragmentation is really difficult, because if I have to count the number of directorates which I now need to consult to take this further, it's getting it's a hazard. South Africa is very good with it. Michelle alluded to that as well in her talk, that she had to work through, I can't remember now, but a large number of pieces of legislation, and that is actually tying our legs to do a lot of things. And there is some key, I don't know, but we need to look at how to run with the next leg of people who needs to run it.
Thanks, Jan Hendrik. Yes, I sympathize with that level of complexity, because that is our working environment, and that is it changes. It changes continuously, and it's very, like you said, when you start a sentence and you say it's very complicated, everyone's a bit like, but it is very complicated. That's the reality of the situation. So the last sort of question from Mary Emma Ray touches on that. Similar topic. She says, what support do small-scale and informal sector farmers have from DAF? I think you spoke about that, and provincial government departments in terms of managing pests and diseases. I once suggested to Steve Cornelius and applied for funding, but came to naught, that ARC DAF implement mobile plant clinics to rural areas that have been tested in several poorer countries and worked well. So lots of talk, but no implementation. So Mary, I can say the ARC has a fully equipped mobile plant clinic that is available to anyone that wants to use it. We ourselves have used it successfully for outreach programs that when we get funding for it. So all that we are asking for is gas money, and we'll load it up with pathologist or whoever what needs to go with, and it can go. It's just it needs funding to get there. It's new. It's got 4,000 kilometers, or I think less than that on the clock. It's fully equipped. It has everything in it, and it's available. It's available for anyone that needs to use it. So we've had several very good outreach programs, and what is so nice about those outreach programs is that we pick up a lot of the pathologist and the micro specialists that work on their organisms really like doing that, because they find so many new things, and they collect specimens, and they bring it back and they study it. So it is available. It's just it's funding to get it on the road, and specific funding. So if there's anyone that wants to include it in a project or a program or a call or whatever, you really are more than welcome to do so, and you can contact myself, or and we can discuss it further. So colleagues, I'm just checking if making sure that Mr. Sieberhagen says that he will wait for Dave's talk. He's looking for collaborations, people to collaborate with. So Jansie, I think that's kind of a wrap from me, if there's nothing else. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ansa, for chairing that session. It was ideal because you have your expertise as well, and you know what questions to ask and what responses. Thank you very much to all our speakers. I just want to say the one thing is that in the audience, according to the RSVP page, we expected 3 diplomats to be present, and I have no way of checking that, but I will do a more proper introduction tomorrow. We've also had representatives, of course, of Department of Science and Innovation, Delrid, which used to be DAF and is now something complicated, and also from the Department of Forestry, Fisheries and the Environment. So I'm very pleased that we could have your participation and your listening today. I also just appreciate the expertise that is gathered here today, the 5 very expert speakers who have given us knowledge straight from their work. Going forward after this, the presentations and videos of presentations will be on the NSTF website with the speaker's permission. So some of them won't be there, but probably the majority will be there. We also have proceedings which are being worked on by our scribe, Cynthia, and then Debbie will be doing a media release, which entails a summary of issues that are important, that have arisen today and will arise tomorrow. And that is very useful as a communication tool. Then we have a team of people, Wynand Swart, Dave Berger, Nstf van Vuren, and who have I left out? We have a team of people who've spoken here and are speaking tomorrow who planned this discussion forum. And we've spent about 2 years, isn't it? About 2 years planning this discussion forum. It certainly has been worth the wait, I must say. And the team will come together again after this, and we'll discuss what is the way forward. How can we pick up some of these issues that are very urgent, particularly issues in policy development? What can we do to actually facilitate some change there? Right, I think that is the end of today's proceedings. Thank you.
Jancy, sorry
Yes.
for the interruption. I see I missed 2 hands. There are 2 hands up from Candice Nightingale and Karen Venter in the attendees. I missed that. Sorry, maybe we can just get their questions.
Okay. Let me see. I need to allow them to talk.
Thank you, Answer. My question was actually answered after I asked it, so no need to ask again. Thank you very much.
And Karen Venter? Okay, I don't know if Karen Venter is there. Please, if you have further questions.
Sorry, that was accidental.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Certainly welcome to put questions and answers. Yes, answers as well. Questions and answers in the Q&A blocks. And if you have access to the chat also there. I see that Prof. Chrissy Ray has said thank you for some great talks this morning.
And then there's a hand from Flo Masahela. And Julie Makwela.
Hi there, can I go ahead?
Yes. Yes, Claude.
All right, thank you very much. I had actually put my question in the chat. I don't know why it didn't come through. Sorry for that. So I had a question for Dr. Roger Price. And my question is just because I saw he outlined quite some few management strategies for the current pests and what we could look forward to. And I work a little bit in the agriculture space and a little bit in the environment. So I'm a bit on the borderline and I deal with biotechnology as well. So I just wanted to find out from him, because we bit in a tight space. You know, when pesticides are used, there's quite a pushback. There are a lot of opinions and views on that, especially from the biodiversity and environmental side of things. And then on the other hand, we've got the new technologies that are available when it comes to agriculture and just improving the varieties and protection against pests and so on. And also in that front, there's different views, opinions, pushbacks, and so on, even including ethical issues and biodiversity and management aspects as well. I just want to find out from him if he sees us finding any middle ground in where all these options we have at our hand can be used to complement each other, even if integrated pest management strategies are brought in. So that's my question to him. Where do we find the middle ground in all of this towards the sustainability that he spoke about? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Price.
Yes, we all talk about integrated pest management strategies, but very little evidence on the ground of anything being done. You know, there's a lot of talk about IPM is a buzzword and how it's been important to use it, but we need to practice what we preach. And you know, there's not much evidence at the moment of integrating the use of pesticides with other methods, alternative methods. At the moment, there's a need to produce the crop. The smallholders need food to survive. They need to grow crops to sell. They will spray. Commercial guys will spray. They have their spray thresholds. They're far more sophisticated with when they spray and what they spray. But again, it's to spray. It's until it's dead. That's the problem. And this isn't leaving any wiggle room at all for natural enemies to come in, for habitat management, for conservation agriculture techniques. So we need to get real and say, you know, how are we going to implement pest management, IPM? How are we going to do it properly? And at the moment, there's such a pressure to produce food and to make money from the land that we're just creating problems of contamination and pesticide resistance. And I know there are some farmers out there that are going organic and going IPM, but we definitely need more of that. And it needs to be made viable and proven that it's viable, so that if some farmers can show that, yes, they can be viable, economically viable, environmentally sustainable by going into IPM and doing it properly, then that word will spread out to the other guys. So it's just a matter of technology and communication. And as I mentioned in my talk, it's communication platforms are the key. It's the word must get out there, and that is essential. Thank you.
So I just want to say that there are some themes that emerged today that were discussed also at the Preparing for Epidemics in South Africa Human and Animal Discussion Forum that we held on the 25th and 26th of February. Issues like the One Health approach, the importance of data, mathematical modeling, multidisciplinary approaches, and so on. There was also a presentation by SANSA, the National Space Agency, about satellite monitoring. And I actually think we should hear from SANSA again. But if you will, you could go and have a look on our website. All the material is there from that discussion forum. It's Preparing for Epidemics. And we can pick up some threads from that possibly tomorrow. Thanks once again to all of you. Thank you for all the participants who have stayed till the end. We haven't really had a dwindling of attendees. So it's been a very fascinating day, shall I say, more than a morning. And keep well and take care until tomorrow.